Thanks, Suzanne. Thanks everyone for joining. So as she mentioned, we've heard a lot about ESG related risks today, but now we want to explore the idea of opportunity, attracting capital and talent, retaining capital and talent, and how you make it work, how you integrate ESG into your business strategy. So today we have Tensie Whelan, the director of the NYU Stern Center for Sustainable Business. We have Donato Calachi, VP of Accounts and Innovation at Datamarin, and Mike Wallace, a partner at Environmental Resources Management. So thanks everyone for joining us today. And I want to kick off this discussion with a general question for everybody. And I can start with Tansi if you'd like. And it's, how do you know if a business is taking ESG seriously?
Well, good morning, and terrific to be here with everyone. Very much enjoyed the previous panel, and thanks so much to Datamarin for organizing and hosting us. So how do we know if a company is taking this seriously? Well, first and foremost, are they integrating their sustainability or ESG strategy into their business strategy? Is it part and parcel? Do they are they assessing the financial returns of their sustainability strategy? Are they divorcing their ESG disclosures from their financial disclosures? Are they able to point to how they're driving innovation, employee engagement, productivity, risk mitigation, et cetera, through focusing on material ESG issues? Or are they focusing on immaterial issues, in which case we'd also be concerned. Are they focusing on corporate social responsibility solely, in other words, community relations and philanthropy, versus actually changing how they do business to address the material ESG issues that affect them and affect others?
Exactly. What about Donato? What do you think about that?
So in my experience, I guess that every company is on a different stage of the journey to maturity, right? So I guess we also have to understand the context where they're coming from. For large companies, there are different kind of challenges, and typically one of the problems that they have is siloed departments. So ESG is in a single team and is not connecting with the rest, which resonates with the point that Tansi was making before about connecting financial and non-financial information, understanding what are the consequences there. To be honest, in my experience, I also met many companies that are at the beginning of their journey right now, but they're more mature than companies that started years before. And I think this proves a very interesting point, which is the field of ESG is evolving so dynamically, so rapidly, that it's easy, if you consider yourself a leader, to become a bit lazy, and you think you're doing all that you have to do. You're checking all the boxes, you're getting great ratings, and then you lose track of the new emerging issues. Those gray rhinos that also Lisa was mentioning in the previous session. So having this ability to understand that there are always new issues emerging, I think it's a great sign of maturity of the company and resilience for the future.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, Mike, what do you think? How do you know if a business is taking ESG seriously?
In our experiences, we're working across pretty much every industry out there and at different levels. Like Donato said, every company's at a different level right now. I think this year, for instance, I've seen more inaugural reports than any other year in my career, and I've been at this for 25 years. So it's like suddenly the dam has broken and everyone's rolling out their sustainability reports, their disclosures, et cetera. I think from a North American bias point of view, if the general counsel is involved, they're taking it very seriously. And Sandy and Lisa both kind of alluded to that in their examples of what they've been doing. And by all means, American Electric Power and what Sandy's been doing there for years is truly a leadership example of maturity of what a company could and should be doing. We're seeing tremendous shifts in the people that are around the table identifying material topics too. It used to be the CSO would be lucky if they got the investor relations officer, and how dare they even go talk to the general counsel. General counsel wouldn't even know what a CSO was 3-4 years ago. But now we see DE&I, human resources, EH&S, environment, health and safety professionals, marketing and sales, because you can't sell a product these days because your customer is certainly going to ask you about these issues. So the bigger that circle, that internal council, all the better, and the more healthy for the company. It does take time, it does take investment, and it does take engagement. But I've been really impressed by the growth of the internal ESG councils that we're seeing lately in our work across the board.
Definitely. So a lot of cross functionality,
Yeah.
and that's how you know that a company is taking this seriously. So to move to the opportunities kind of question here, why is embedding ESG into the corporate strategy directly good for business? I want to start with Tensie again, because I know that you've participated in some academic research, showing how ESG connects to financial performance. Maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
Terrific. Be glad to, Lindsay. So let me focus on three areas. First of all, three bodies of research that we've done. So first, we looked at the last 5 years of academic research, about more than 1,000 studies, looking at the correlation between corporate financial performance and investment performance portfolio and ESG. And what we found is on the corporate side, 55% of those studies found a positive relationship between corporate financial performance and ESG. We also found that only, 8% found a negative correlation. When we look at the investor side, we found that 33% of the studies found a positive or alpha relationship, and 26% found that it performed as well as conventional, and only 14% found a negative. This is, again, looking across peer-reviewed journals and so on. But that's just a correlation. It's not causality. So looking at causality, we've done a lot of work around looking at the return on sustainability investment for corporations, identified 9 mediating factors that drive better financial performance when you put in place embedded sustainability strategies. And those include innovation and growth, operational efficiencies, risk mitigation, employee engagement and retention, customer loyalty, improved sales, et cetera. So as examples, we looked at the automotive sector. Waste reduction strategies are very important in that sector. For one company, we found $285 million of financial benefit related to their waste reduction strategies, which included things like recycling paint and solvents. When you do that, you buy less of the virgin stuff. You no longer pay the waste disposal costs, and actually they were selling some of the recycled product. In another example, looking at a apparel company who had a circular solution for customers reselling gently furbished product. Not only did they have a higher margin on selling those products, but they got people to buy more product when they came. And they also had lower acquisition costs for bringing in a younger clientele, which they'd been struggling to bring in before. So there was very significant financial benefit, as an example. And then the final body of research that we've been doing is around the consumer shifts and demand for these types of things. So we worked with our IRI to collect all of our barcode data at retail for consumer packaged goods. And we found, in looking for the past 5 years, 36 of 40 CPG categories, 73,000 SKUs, that sustainability was responsible for 55% of the growth in CPG, together with a 39% premium. And we looked at this across all types of demographics, et cetera. I won't go into the details, but you can see it in virtually all categories for most demographics. And it's a trend that has survived and indeed continued through the pandemic.
It's really interesting. So there's a lot of solid data points out there, which I think is another theme of this event is data. So maybe Donato, let's move to you for a second. What is the evidence out there? Why is embedding ESG into the corporate strategy good for business?
Thank you, Lindsay. And I was very happy to be on this panel specifically because when it comes to ESG, it's always about risks or new requirements, right? So it's always about the stick and not the carrot. But there are fantastic opportunities to seize out there in relation to this world. And I think the research that, for example, Tensie and her team conducted sheds an important light on this. That also justifies the increasing pace of institutionalization that we see in the field, right? And this is a reflection of the idea that materiality is not a state of being, but more a process of becoming. Just to quote, my favorite paper on that subject, pathways to materiality. But it's interesting, and maybe if we have time, I would be curious to hear from Tensie if there have been any tests they conducting on understanding if the motivation of the business case around this financial connection, the financial relationship between ESG and financial performance has changed over the years, because this is there is a lot of evidence on this, meaning that traditionally ESG, corporate responsibility, has always been motivated with an idea of corporate reputation, creating that awareness, that legitimacy to operate. But now new motivations are emerging. It's really about creation of value in the long term and being future proof for emerging challenges, essentially. And this is a real reflection of that idea of dynamic materiality. And also, I think it poses a completely new set of challenges to boards and decision makers. This is unprecedented in a way. It calls for a new kind of solutions, meaning everybody right now is sort of rushing to take net zero commitments, right? So there's the challenge of making sure that you deliver on those. So technically being able to estimate your emissions and then monitor them over time. But there is also an underlying problem that only few are seeing right now, but it will become increasingly important, which is we know climate change, climate risk, and climate opportunities as well are top of the agenda. But what is going to be the next climate kind of issue, like the next topic on the agenda? Is it going to be human capital? And I think Mike will agree on that, knowing him, or biodiversity, or diversity in general. Most probably, there will be different topics, different issues in different world areas, depending on how policy and stakeholder expectations move in that sense. But again, this calls for a new kind of approach to monitor these issues.
Absolutely. And I'll take that opportunity to ask Mike, he mentioned human capital, climate change. How do you take these sorts of ESG topics, properly integrate them into the strategy so that it's good for the business? You use these as opportunities. Can you tell me what you think there, Mike?
Sure. So we've been fortunate to be working with organizations like the World Business Council for Sustainable Development and Data Moran and the Capitals Coalition over the last few years on some of this new thinking that's going on in the world. For the last 15 years of this field, most of us have been running around measuring lagging indicators and reporting on things that have already happened. And it's kind of a sad story in many ways. If you're the boss in the company and you're the CSO telling about your big footprint all the time, the boss is probably saying, why don't you tell a better story? Well, now we do see some shifting going on as carbon becomes a much more important issue, and people are valuing it and measuring it differently now and with more credibility now. There are ways to reduce your emissions and quantify it. And if you can quantify it, then you can monetize it, right? So now you can start to show the value of that. Also, in this work that we've been doing, it kind of draws on the 6 capitals that were created or initially kind of coalesced around the International Integrating Reporting Council: intellectual, financial, manufactured, and human, social, and natural capital, right? Now, many companies don't want to talk about their people as human capital, but would you rather talk about them as liabilities, as we currently do right now? I mean, employees show up on the liability side of the balance sheet. And if you look at them as a cost all the time, you're always going to be trying to cut that cost. But if you look at them as valuable and as capital, how might you think about them differently? So the work we've been doing with the Capitals Coalition is really kind of pushing on this agenda. How does one value a person, right? And what is the value of that person while they're working and while they're not working, right? A lot of companies love to brag about their employee engagement programs and how much volunteerism is going on. Look at the volunteer program and ask the company, when does that volunteerism take place? Is it on the weekend, on the employee's time, or during the week, during the worker time? There's a big difference there, right, for you and me as individuals. And what's the value of that volunteer? Is it an administrative person, or is it or how many executives are out there in the field picking up garbage or doing whatever they're doing with volunteerism? All this being said, human capital and social capital, for that matter, are very interconnected. All of them are, actually, because you can't have an impact or can't draw on one capital without having an impact on the other. So we're always drawing on natural and social capital and using that to produce financial capital, right, through manufacturing and intellectual work, et cetera. So if you really truly take care of your people and you've got them engaged and they're loyal to the company, they will produce better. They will be more effective, more efficient, hopefully. And there's a lot of studies out there that prove that. Also, if they're a healthy and well-balanced, engaged employee, they're satisfied. When they go home, they're going home to their families and maybe treating their families in a different way, and more energized when they go home to engage with the community, and maybe also more energized to volunteer in things on their own time and do more community outreach. There's a lot of things that are going on right now, and thinking about this, and you layer on there COVID, wellness, well-being, mental health, all these things are coming into play right now. It's kind of a really unique point in our field, because we've truly hit a reset moment where we've all realized, wow, if we actually sit still for a little while, we can reduce our footprint, but we can still be very productive. I mean, I don't like sitting in front of screens all day long, but I'm working around the world on amazing stuff. I just never leave my small compound here in Portland, Oregon.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we just have another couple minutes left. So I just wanted to kind of end this discussion with any takeaways in terms of the opportunity from ESG and what companies need to do to kind of take advantage of the opportunities ESG is bringing to them. So I'll start with Tensie and kind of work around.
Thanks. Well, I love the opportunity side of this. If I look at innovation, for example, business is in the business of solving challenges and creating opportunities. And the biggest challenges we have in front of us are environmental and social. And so the building those criteria into the company's design, if it's producing products, into services that it offers, I think is going to provide those companies with competitive advantage. Mike was talking about the human resources piece. We did some work using our return on sustainability investment methodology with REI. They are, through the fact that they are a purpose-oriented, sustainably oriented company, they are seeing a benefit of about $34 million a year in terms of increased productivity and reduced turnover from their employees, which is about 5% of their labor costs. So just to sort of support what Mike is saying, we need to stop turning labor into an externality and think about it as something that's really important to creating value. Diversity and inclusion, other key area to focus on in terms of the upside and opportunities for business. I think, moving forward, if we begin to think, just as an example, companies think about waste as compliance. Waste is an operational efficiency, right? You're buying more than you need to pay to dispose of what you don't need. That's stupid. So, as we look at these types of opportunities, right, we need to just approach it with a different mindset. And I think we're really beginning to see that happen.
Great. I think we might be out of time, but I wanted to thank everyone so much for participating. And please continue to send in questions and enjoy the rest of the conference.